I'm with Max Porterfield, CEO of Callinex Mines. Callinex is out with news this morning on the Point Leamington base metals project in Newfoundland. Max, what can you tell us about this project?
Well, it's a project that we've had in our portfolio for a number of years. We acquired it in tandem with the Nash Creek and Superjack projects in New Brunswick back in 2016. And it's always been a wonderful asset we've held within the portfolio. We bought it, again, when it was out of favor in terms of metal prices at the time. It's a large near-surface VMS deposit that's gold, copper, zinc, silver rich. Again, as you mentioned, in terms of the volume of material there, it's over 18 million tons, the majority of which is in a pit-constrained resource. So that's important to note. That's a pit-constrained resource, an out-of-pit resource that we updated in 2021. And so that mineralization sits mostly within the first 350 meters of surface. At depth, you've got increasing grades, as well as there's been intersections along strike from the deposit, as well as some opportunities there within the resource. So again, it's a great asset. It's within the amazing province of Newfoundland. It also sits within a mineral lease, no different than our Rainbow discovery and the deposits in Manitoba do. So it's advanced permitting. And the province also benefits from favorable hydroelectric power generation, a workforce, and it is one of the top 10 districts in the world for mining, and is consistently rated that high because of its very supportive regime and endowment for deposits and mines like Point Leamington.
So I'm just looking at the news release this morning, and a few things stand out to me. So first of all, it's a VMS deposit, starts at surface, and most of it is in an open pit setting, or it could be part of an open pit mine. And in total, the resource is over 20 million tons, which for VMS, that's pretty good. That's a pretty big deposit. And then also I looked down at this resource, which looks like it was produced in 2021. So the metal prices used are $16.25 gold, $22 silver. So it seems like there's some potential for maybe like an update of this here with modern day prices. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so we did the that's one of the focus points of transitioning and refocusing on Point Leamington is in fact the metal price movements that you've alluded to. So the significant move that you've seen in gold prices, silver prices over the last 12 months, in particular the last quarter, have had a dramatic impact on the in situ value or intrinsic value of the Point Leamington deposit as it sits. So when we acquired Point Leamington, you got to keep in mind gold prices were at $12.50 an ounce. Copper was around $2.20, $2.30 a pound. Zinc was sub 70 cents a pound. So again, we've had a dramatic change and shift, and we've always held these assets within the portfolio, really providing optionality to a rising metal price environment like you're seeing today in gold in particular. And as you evaluate our broader portfolio, as you know, the impact that the rise in metal prices has had on Point Leamington relative to other assets has made it, you know, intrinsically the most valuable deposit we have within the broader portfolio, including what we see in Manitoba. So what we're doing is looking forward is to develop the asset quite aggressively through a multifaceted approach. It's really a three-pronged approach, which is to grow through exploration of the high-grade mineralization that we've have seen at depth there. And the most recent exploration campaign on the deposit was in 2004, where they expanded it with some high-grade mineralization that we've kind of alluded to and mentioned. And we think that we can expand that mineralization. Secondly, we've also staked, based upon 2,400 lines of electromagnetic airborne data, some quality targets. They're isolated EM anomalies that sit in the same geologic setting of an environment that could host a deposit like Point Leamington. So again, we've shown that we can be successful with the drill bit everywhere we've really gone. In New Brunswick, where we had a significant growth of resource base, at the Nash Creek deposit. In Manitoba, where you've seen us grow a significant resource at the Pine Bay camp. And here in Point Leamington, we're starting with a large resource as it sits, and we're going to look to grow that dramatically again, and it's the only resource or an asset that we haven't focused on over the past decade here at Callinex. So beyond the exploration standpoint, the next step in tandem to that is going to be mineralogical as well as metallurgical studies to really nail down the proper flow sheet on the recovery for the base metals and gold in particular. So with that, we are looking and will immediately be strengthening the team with those skill sets, both from a metallurgical standpoint as well as a geological standpoint in the very near future. And those folks have already started to work predating obviously our announcement today on our plans to move the assets forward.
It's always interesting to learn a little more about a project, especially like, so you've held this in Callinex for 8 years. So obviously you've seen the potential at Point Leamington to hold it for that period of time. But let's go back to the last time there was a drill program. So it hasn't seen a drill rig in 20 years. So in 2004, it was drilled, and one of the last holes that was drilled, it seems, was almost 5 meters, grading 15% zinc, over 4 grams per ton gold, 57 grams per ton silver, and 0.36% copper. So that's a pretty good drill intercept. Why hasn't it seen any drilling in the last 20 years, Max?
I mean, the same question can be held about a lot of different assets out there, and I think for us in particular, it's been priority. When we first acquired those 2 deposits in 2016, our immediate focus at the time was realizing and seeing the opportunity in zinc prices, where zinc was at 70 cents, and zinc very quickly in tandem with our growth and resource in New Brunswick rallied quite strongly and went to $1.60 a pound. If you recall, in 2018, the U.S.-Chinese trade wars poured really water on that zinc market rally that was quite significant, and zinc prices dropped dramatically down below $1 pretty quick after that. And then that led us from that success, that led us to Manitoba. Within a couple drill holes, we hit the Rainbow discovery, and have been growing that resource. And over the past 12 months, as we mentioned previously, you've seen this dramatic rise in gold prices in particular, which in turn has produced an in situ value of based upon the resource of more than twice what we've already drilled out in Manitoba right now. So incremental dollars spent within the portfolio at this given time, we feel that we can add much more value to Point Leamington than to Manitoba. If you look at the history of Point Leamington, really over the last 20 years, and going back since its discovery, it's got a great history to kind of also talk about why it hasn't been advanced more further. It's really what was the other opportunities in those companies and where were they at the time. The deposit was originally discovered by Noranda in 1971. And predating that, it was actually Newmont and Phelps Dodge that worked the property. Newmont in 1953. And then following Newmont, it was Phelps Dodge that flew the airborne EM in 1967. And then Noranda followed up, made the discovery in 1971 and held it from 1971 all the way to 1998 when Rubicon got it. And then in 1999, just the following year, it was optioned by BHP on a 70-30 deal where BHP was going to take it to earn 70% into production. And of course, you got to see where that project might have fit within the broader perspective of BHP as an organization, and then turn around and it was used as the IPO asset for Newmarket in 2014. And I'm sorry, in 2004, it was TLC Ventures had it, drilled those 5 holes of exploration, and then ultimately that ended up in Newmarket's hands. And the Newmarket only had it for a couple of years, did 2 holes, and started early metallurgical work on it before moving to Australia, where they had a ton of success and were subsequently acquired by Kirkland Lake. And so we acquired it just prior to their acquisition, or them being acquired by Kirkland Lake, and it sat within our portfolio until now. And now is really the perfect time for us to move it forward, based upon really where things sit and we've kind of discussed today.
Okay, so a lot of work has been done and you've got a nice foundation at Point Leamington. So what's the order of business in 2025 for Callinex?
So it's going to be, again, we need to continue to review some geophysics on the drill holes in the drill hole database, and refine that further, and that will aid us in our exploration plans moving forward for drilling and expanding the deposit. We always want to have a full reevaluation of things and reevaluate the valuation we've already done. And that's just part of the process that we always have prior to conducting exploration. And then the same thing will be had for the regional airborne data, and will involve a ground truthing of that data. From the metallurgical side of things, as I mentioned, we've strengthened the team from that standpoint, and that will be announced in the very near future. But we really look to bring the best of the best in terms of metallurgists, and not only that, that have a proven track record of success, as well as innovation within the industry. And that has been a big thing that's led us to success, is really being innovative and bringing on a lot of people that have really innovative kind of minds. And they're certainly going to do that. So they've already reviewed Point Leamington and the path forward from a metallurgical standpoint, and it'll be a multi-phase approach. And so that will, and those samples will be obtained at the same time. We'll conduct a exploration campaign to follow up on obviously the re-review that we need to get done leading into that exploration campaign. And what you'd like to see is, or what you'll expect to see, is more likely an up to 5,000 meter exploration campaign that will be aimed at testing to grow the resource within Point Leamington, collect the metallurgical samples, as I mentioned, and then also test these isolated targets that will refine further prior to doing so later this year.
So Point Leamington is off the bench and into the forefront for Callinex, largely due to its gold and silver endowment. So you have a resource already. It's a pretty impressive one. So yeah. Is this the sort of thing where
it's got 500,000 ounces of gold in the pit constrained resource,
right?
And then of course significant credits of copper, zinc, and silver.
So is this the sort of project that Callinex can advance pretty rapidly to, let's say, a PEA or PFS? You talked about you need to do some work on the metallurgical testing, some more exploration to see if you can grow this deposit a bit. But then once that is done, is this going to be set for a PEA?
Yeah, so once this is all complete, we'll be in a position to very quickly advance to economic studies, whether we choose to go straight to a PEA or conduct also infill drilling, because again, it's on an indicated and inferred basis, and we can use the inferred resource certainly for a PEA, but as we drive it even further past that, of course, you need to upgrade that resource, and that can be done very, very quickly and very inexpensively given how shallow that mineralization is. So that might be something that could potentially be done as we continue forward with the deposit. But certainly, once we refine down the metallurgical test work, as well as really see where we sit from an exploration standpoint, we will be in a position to either move immediately to a PEA or do that infill drilling and then leapfrog to more advanced studies at that time, based upon having the ability to do so.
There's a lot of activity in Newfoundland in the last few years. Can you tell us about this province of Canada and why it's so attractive from a mining standpoint?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of great successes in Newfoundland, Newfound Gold, Firefly Metals. Firefly Metals is a good example, as well as it was a historic deposit that's had a revisit with great success. And that's been certainly a big win for investors. If you look at Newfoundland as a jurisdiction, there's always a long history of mining, like many jurisdictions within Canada. And if you look at mining today, it accounts for roughly about a third of the GDP of Newfoundland. But what also obviously drives all that is pedigree in that endowment, and so it has a rich endowment of multiple deposit styles within the province, and most notably is its robust VMS deposits throughout it. In the immediate area where Point Leamington sits, and that's one thing to be noted about VMS deposits, no different than investors are familiar with our work in Manitoba, or these VMS deposits globally, but they occur in clusters. So where you find one, you typically find many others, and that's a kind of just the nature of their formation. And so again, that's a real opportunity in terms of why all that infrastructure is there. Is when you find one, you'll find many others. The same being the case with what we're working on. And so that all has that infrastructure, the workforce, the permitting regime, and then top it off is the more recent build out of the hydroelectric power generation in Newfoundland. So not only are we going to be looking to mine these critical minerals, but we can do so in a very efficient, low cost way that's generated from a clean source. And so, really all these things kind of put together as what has made Newfoundland one of the top 10 jurisdictions for exploration and, of course, mining on a global basis, as ranked by the Fraser Institute for not just 1-2 years, but this has been consistent in Newfoundland, as you kind of alluded to with your question.
Okay, Point Leamington. It looks exciting, and I look forward to all the news that will be coming out of Point Leamington in 2025 from Callinex. And then this final question, Max. Obviously, what's going to be happening in Manitoba in 2025?
So in Manitoba, we're going to continue to work on the permitting. That's something that we've set out to do, and we put it with the AEP application. At any given point, we can top up the treasury and get to back to work in Manitoba when the time makes sense. But again, as I mentioned, dollar for dollar, when we look to deploy capital within a portfolio, and Callinex again possesses a very strong portfolio, no different than when Newmarket reprioritized Point Leamington within their broader portfolio. We're doing the same today. And then that's just a part of the facts of life. So Manitoba is not forever gone or for lost. The high-grade resource we have there still sits there. Again, we are at a resource stage, and we are pending the AEP permit applications, which will allow for a bulk sample of the Rainbow deposit and to very quickly continue to advance. And the exploration targets that we've defined are still ready and outlined to be drill ready. But in the meantime, we need to focus our capital where it's going to provide the biggest upside and take the company the furthest for our shareholders and our long-term vision as we built the portfolio in a very strategic way going back to 2016, and that's going to be in Newfoundland for the reasons we've discussed today. And I think they're obviously very, very good reasons, and they've got a kind of golden touch to it all.
Thank you very much, Max. I appreciate your time.
Thanks so much again for having me.